Hi everybody, it's Patricia Warby, Alchemy Therapies here, and another in my weekly updates. But this time I'm going to be doing a review of this book, A New Science of Heaven by Robert Temple, which I've just completed reading. A fascinating book, and I just wanted to give an honest review because not many people do that. And also I want to expand the level of knowledge of what's really going on in science at the moment on the science and spirituality divide. So Robert is actually exploring a very bold and unconventional idea that many of you will never have heard of, that suggests that plasma, which is one of the four fundamental states of matter, could be the foundation for a new understanding of the cosmos, life, and consciousness. He presents a very broad, wide-ranging understanding. And he starts with looking at the large cosmological implications of plasma, including the nature of the Kordylewski clouds, which I'd never heard of, but apparently there are two of them that are in our galaxy and contain these particles in plasma, electrons, protons, and charged particles that seem to self-organize. So in a way, what he's saying is that plasma physicists are showing that what we currently consider non-living matter, this cloud of information and electrical charge, may actually have the potential for intelligence and self-awareness. And that they, in fact, the clouds themselves and plasma more generally could be the origin of matter, that matter comes into being because of this interaction with plasma and the field in which it is embedded. So it's a monumental theory, if that's correct, because plasma is everywhere. It's really what underlies the universe. You know, when we think of the vacuum that matter is suspended in, the vacuum is what we understood it to be, which unfortunately is an unfortunate name because it suggests that it's empty, and that couldn't be further from the truth. In fact, the plasma has this self-organizing capability, so it's far from empty space out there. He kind of talks about it as an ionized gas, I guess. That's the nearest term we can come to use to describe it. And he's saying that it makes up 99% of the visible universe. In fact, I think it's probably more than that. It's probably 99.9%, according to other physicists that I've looked at. Matter is an extremely unusual state. The rest is plasma, and it's found everywhere in stars, nebulae, and even lightning. Lightning is probably the closest we come to understanding plasma or witnessing it. And there have been some extraordinary experiences that people have had with ball lightning, which seems to be able to traverse through solid objects. There have been cases recorded of it entering a plane and rolling down inside the plane. Certainly, airline pilots have often reported strange effects of meeting unexplained phenomena. And it's likely that plasma is what constitutes that. He argues very cogently, I think, that the mainstream science has largely ignored the deeper implications because it's simply really uncomfortable. Because if we thought of intelligence out there in the universe in which we're embedded, as opposed to just us being intelligent, then rocks are intelligent, you know, stars are intelligent. All these things that we've previously considered just inanimate matter now have something much more fundamental about them that calls into question our superiority, I guess. And it also, I guess, for mainstream science, it smacks perhaps of UFOs and paranormal phenomena. And there's nothing mainstream science hates more than paranormal phenomena. Even though we've had very recently examples. Certainly in the US, I can remember strange sightings which have been, put down to weather or some simple explanation, because make no bones about it, this is being explored in science, but it's high security science. It's been taken over by the security services. So there's lots of stuff going on, some of which is been declassified, and he goes into a lot of detail on some of the early experiments in the 1950s, for instance, on these phenomena and how much has been hidden from us. So I don't want to sound like a conspiracy theorist, because I'm not, but I think, there is a lot that's kept under wraps, because it's extremely interesting to think that you could manipulate plasma to, create new weather systems, to create new intelligent life, So certainly from a security point of view, that stuff has to be kept very, very secret. So it really ties into the idea that complexity arises in systems where there is a self-organizing capability, and plasma certainly falls into that category. And so you could consider it a primitive form of life or consciousness, and it could be that it is the basis of consciousness in the universe. He discusses at length many of the fundamental experiments and the research, and he goes into a lot of detail with some of the prime contenders for Nobel laureates and so on in science, some of whom he seems to have known personally, like David Bohm. And I can't fault him for his rigor in discussing the whole history of plasma phenomena and discovery. I did find it a little tedious midway through, because he, rather than quoting the paper and then just referencing it, he gives you the full title and all the authors in the main text, which I just find that's, for my brain anyway, it's too much information, and I'm losing the essence of what he's saying because I'm concentrating on the detail. He talks about many of these people were dismissed in their discovery, like Hannes Alfvén, who worked in plasma physics and initially was derided, of course, because this is uncomfortable science, but has been subsequently validated. And it does actually, it calls into question the Big Bang Theory as well, which, is already beginning to fall apart. I think there are lots of holes in that theory, because he's saying that the electromagnetic forces in plasma are far more important in shaping the universe than gravity. And so it's certainly an interesting idea. So the first third of the book is on cosmology, I guess. He then moves on to perhaps more general critiquing of the materialist assumptions. So he's coming more into the ideas of consciousness and the nature of the universe and life. And probably the final third of the book is the most important for me, because that's looking at biological life and how biological life may be an innate result of the intelligence of plasma. And so he goes back, as I've said, to many studies, and he looks at how that might have occurred. He references the phenomena that I've also talked about in my book, Life Illuminated, of the flash of light that occurs upon death. This is not something that's widely known, but has been widely reported. The problem is it's not visible to the naked eye generally, but it seems that there's a death flash, but there is also one upon conception. At the moment the sperm enters the egg, whichever one has finally penetrated the egg, and there is a burst of light, and that has actually been recorded, and you can see that on YouTube if you look it up. So there seems to be a result of light interacting with biology in some way that signals the beginning and the end of biological life as we know it. So that to me was very stunning. And he talks about the fact that there could be structures in other universes for non-carbon based forms of life. We've considered that before, maybe silicon based forms that could exist in other planetary environments, including potentially in our own solar system as well. And perhaps the most controversial idea that he explores is that plasma-based life forms may have played a role in Earth's evolution and our history. And he looks back at ancient myths and religious visions and UFO phenomena, including some of the recent sightings, He doesn't go as far as looking at crop circles, because I think that, again, is one of those no-go areas in science discussion today. In fact, I saw an article recently in the news that told people off for forming crop circles. So it's very much, I think, a feed of misinformation that there are some man-made ones, but there's no record for some of these that you can explain, because there's no sign of anything man-made in them. There's no tire marks, foot marks, even on a wet night, where they just spontaneously arise. So, my first thought was crop circles could be as a result of plasma intelligence, maybe these plasma balls, which have been recorded forming a crop circle, although, again, that video is much derided and mocked as being fake. So, it's very difficult to say, but I think it's interesting to think that there could be a scientific explanation for these unexplained phenomena. It's very speculative, of course, and it may be a little bit too woo-woo for some people on that, but I found it very compelling. He's really done his research, and I loved the fact of coming onto the biology and the neuroscience and our concept of how the brain self-organizes, and how indeed we might have a plasma body as well as a physical body. A plasma body exists around us, apparently, with the self-organizing information in it, and it could explain what we consider in spiritual circles is often referred to as the aura around a person. And certainly I was very skeptical of auras, and I wouldn't entertain such an idea until I trained in energy work. Using the hands, you can actually detect the energy around a person. You can often locate problems in their physical body by feeling the energy around the body. So you don't even have to touch a person, but you can feel a ripple, if you like, in the vibration around a person. And that, for a very scientific person, which I am, is extraordinary. And I would have laughed if you'd have told me that 20 years ago. But I now quite regularly can pick that signal up and report to people, and it's remarkably accurate. So is it that I'm able to interact with a plasma body around a person? Why not? Certainly an open-minded person would question and ask that, and why not explore that, really? I think a lot of what's in here dovetails really nicely with Nassim Haramein's work, which I've also explored, and Federico Fagin's ideas. And I've done separate reviews of Federico's book, and also Nassim I've covered quite rigorously as well, because I find his explorations really, really extraordinary. So in conclusion, New Science of Heaven is quite challenging if you are a conventional thinker, because it's challenging all the boundaries, and it's suggesting that plasma may be not only the dominant material in the universe, but it may also create the world that we see. And I liked it because it did challenge me. I would have said it could have been slightly shorter and still got its points across. As I say, the detail was a little bit bogging in the middle, but an important book, an absolutely important book, which I highly recommend. So folks, that's my review today, and I'm going to end my stream now and see if this works. But please join me for future lives. I'm going to be doing many more, and see if this option works for you, my subscribers. So take care. Find me on alchemytherapies.co.uk and speak soon. Bye for now.